Welcome to Believers IAS Academy. In this today's video, we will be analyzing the essay paper of the 2025 mains examination, and it becomes absolutely important to make sure that we try and understand how the pattern of the examination of this particular year's paper is. Even before we start this video, I just want to take this opportunity and moment to congratulate all my fellow aspirants, my students, who have been able to, give the mains this year. I wish you all the best for your upcoming examinations as well. So on this, first note, let's start the video. And even before we proceed in terms of trying to address the questions that were asked today, we will first understand the way UPSC asks its essays every year. So first let's understand the structure of the essay writing as to what is the way as to how you have to write the essays for the UPSC examination and all the possible dimensions from which you can take the informations for the essay building. So now this becomes absolutely important, especially for beginners who are absolutely clueless as to what to do for essay writing, because you can provided with some practice you can easily write an answer for 250 marks, let's say a GS answer for about 150 to 200 words, right? Probably for 1 to 2 pages, because here I'm talking about 1300 1400 words, which is almost about 12 to 14 pages, or let's say 10 to 12 pages of essay that you have to talk or write about one particular issue. So that is just not the game, but also the way UPSC asks it, because typically the UPSC essays which we see demand abstract and philosophical depth in terms of how you present the topic, and also in terms of your clarity, the students clarity in terms of connecting the topics, and also making sure that they connect it with some of the ground examples. Because if there is a question in the UPSC question paper, be it the essay or even the GS paper, it would be there because of some relevance that UPSC would have picked from the current affairs or some of the ground examples based on the contemporary issues that are going on. So it is absolutely important that anybody whosoever attempts or practices essay must also be able to connect those essay topics or the flow of the essay with the examples which are absolutely relevant for the examination. So speaking of which, we should also talk about the dimensions, because how are you going to put so many informations or let's say an essay on a particular topic has to be written for about 10 to 12 pages, which means you need a lot of things, lot of data to write this. So you need headings, right? Different headings under a particular topic, and also underneath it you need to have various subtopics also, right? So this is what the dimension is. So you need to be able to bring in dimensions from various aspects. And from where are you going to get or pick these dimensions? It is mostly from the static part of the syllabus which you have studied, be it from your polity, history, economy, geography, environment, and also your current affairs knowledge which you have gotten from newspaper reading. And also mostly it even matters based on the personal interest of a particular aspirant, if they have the habit of reading books, right, apart from the current affairs and the static knowledge that they are supposed to read. I mean to say, apart from the UPSC syllabus, if the student or an aspirant is an avid reader, right, then chances are that the particular student would find the essay paper more easier, and also the kind of information that the aspirant will be able to put in these essays will even look profound, right? Because talking about the dimension is all about bringing information from various aspects, like talking about the historical aspect of that particular issue, bringing in the ethical and philosophical dimension if there is any scope, and also talking about the political and the societal dimension of that particular issue if it is trying to address the societal aspect of any particular topic, and then also trying to bring inferences from the cultural or the mythological dimension. Maybe if you could think of any story, let's say from the mythology that you can provide it, added to it. And then also most importantly, the current affairs that we spoke absolutely matters a lot, because if you do not know as to why this particular topic is in news, then or let's say why this particular question is in the question paper with respect to what current affairs, absolutely it makes no sense in terms of writing the essay paper. So absolutely it is very important to keep in mind that all these dimensions are absolutely necessary. Now, what are the key to a very good essay? It has to be within the word limit, prescribed by the UPSC, and you have to also ensure that you are in a condition to finish two essays, right? Two essays, and those two essays mostly from the philosophical background, because UPSC used to ask questions, which are kind of topic specific, and the kind of essays at least 3-4 years back weren't completely philosophical. Hardly there used to be one or two or mostly three philosophical essays that UPSC used to ask. But now the pattern has completely changed, where in fact all the 8 out of 8 essays, right, in both the sections, section A and section B, is completely philosophical, making it absolutely important for the aspirant to make sure that they not only focus on the static part of the syllabus or have the ground examples with them with respect to current affairs, but also it is equally important to make sure that they develop an analytical thought process, right? Analytical thought process, where they can think and connect the dots between the topics, and also the kind of dynamics that they can bring with respect to the dimensions they write or try to put in their essay, right? So later, the most important part of the essay, once you have the idea as to what to be put, like in terms of dimensions, and then now you know the word limit, then comes the structuring, right? The structuring of the essay needs to be absolutely very clear, and the flow has to be maintained. And how is the flow? Generally it is through having a clear introduction in the beginning, which pretty much gives a holistic idea about the entire topic that you're going to be writing. And it should have a proper body, I mean to say the different dimensions, right? And also in terms of having a very a lucid connection between each dimension should be established when you write an essay. And at the end, a very strong conclusion with the synthesis of this entire the essay that you have written matters the most in this examination, right? And what about the style of writing? It is to write very concisely, have to be very focused in terms of what are the different kind of themes that you're trying to bring. You just also should keep in mind that you're not overdoing anything, right? You're not overdoing anything, I mean to say that you're not going too much in depth as well, because you have, because here the essay is not just about your knowledge, right? One key important thing to keep in mind, that UPSC essay is not to check how knowledgeable you are, right? It is not to check your vast knowledge capacity that you hold, but mostly it is to check how well can you interpret things, right? How well can you interpret things, and how well can you present it, right? And it's mostly about consolidation. How well can you consolidate a particular topic, and how well can you present it, right? So when that is the need of the essay, overdoing anything or going in depth in terms of trying to explain any particular dimension will not serve the purpose. But also you have to keep in mind that diverse examples from various fields can be used. And also at the end, the most important thing is to ensure a logical flow, because without having a proper flow in terms of what you're going to be writing in various dimensions, the entire essay at the end of the day is just a small just a beautiful random khichdi that the examiner will just definitely throw it out, or probably kind of ignore reading it, right? So that is the key essence of the essay writing in the UPSC examination. Now, having discussed this, we will directly move to the essays that they were asked in the today's examination. So talking about the very first essay, or even before we talk about or go in detail with respect to each and every essay, let's just see what are the different essays that were asked. So first one from the section A was the truth knows no color. The second essay was the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Third was thought finds a world and creates one also. Wow, what a, I mean, the kind of essay topics that you see, you can it's pretty much like a proverb. Every topic of the essay is like a quote. The fourth one is best lessons are learned through bitter experiences. And then you have section B with the first essay is the muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Then we have the years teach much which the days never know. And then it is best to see life as a journey, not as a destination. Of course, this is UPSC's favorite, because this is a theme. You can just study this as a theme, because people who have analyzed previous year's question paper, there were essays pertaining to this particular topic, so which would have been easier for many of the aspirants, and I'm very sure most of the aspirants would have tried attempting this particular question. And then the other essay is the contentment is natural wealth, luxury is artificial poverty. So that's all for the kind of the different essays that they were asked. Now if you see the kind of essays, right, mostly the delineation, the inclination of the essay is towards the philosophical part of the syllabus. Like I think we discussed as to the kind of essays that UPSC used to focus. But now if you see, most of the essay has this philosophical inclination, right? Of course, there are few essays which although look philosophical, but also has some angle towards the international relations, which we will discuss. But the picture of it, the face card of that particular essay, although it is from various discipline, right, pertaining to international relations and all of it, but ultimately it has the face cover which is represented in a philosophical manner, which kind of is like very intimidating for people who have not practiced the essay. But I would say that the paper this year is pretty light. The essay is okay, is doable, right? It wasn't as tough as it was in the year 2024, which probably if people have whosoever have written the essay or have checked the PYQ would definitely know. Now without any further ado, we will just get into the first essay, which is the truth knows no color. So obviously, now talking about the dimensions, what are the different dimensions that can be put? So one is obviously the introduction. Then you will have to talk about the nature of truth, because the question is demanding you to talk about the truth. Truth knows no color, talking about how bias should not exist when you have to talk about truth, and also talking about how the truth does not favor the powerful nor neglect the powerless, right? So if you see this particular topic holds very much relevant. This has relevance from the present day to day things, not just from the geopolitical level, but also at a personal level. You can easily connect to this particular topic, right? So even this was a doable essay topic, but also this is very abstract and very ambiguous, because you should be able to connect the few dimensions that we will be discussing here, and you need to have a very holistic understanding, both philosophically and analytically, to make sure that you ensure the flow when writing this particular essay. So we will talk about the dimensions that could have been written in this particular essay. So the very first being the introduction. Obviously we will discuss what the introduction should have been. Then talking about the dimension, you can talk about the different nature of truth. You can talk about or bring in the historical perspectives when talking about the concept as truth. And you can talk about the truth and justice, truth in science and innovation, modern day relevance, as we discussed that the present current affairs is also important, right? And then you can talk about the challenges to the truth, and you can even bring in some case studies also, and at the end the way forward and the conclusion. Now going a little bit in detail as to what you can put in the introduction, you can talk about how truth as a concept is universal, and also that ensures impartiality in terms of how it should be governed, as in it carries like you can mention as truth being an important determinant which carries no bias in terms of caste, creed, gender, or even color. And also you can talk about how this particular phenomena simply exists in the world. And you can even or let's say it is very important, especially in the introduction, to quote any thinkers or even famous personalities. And in this particular essay, you can actually quote Mahatma Gandhiji's quote where he says, "Truth is God." Right? This idea, which being the fundamental or the foundation of various other aspects or determinants like your morality, or you can even connect it to justice. And also at the end you can talk as to how this particular phenomena, as in truth being the ultimate divine aspect of anything, is like a door that opens towards the progress across civilizations. Right? You can talk about that in the introduction. And also, if you are well aware with respect to ethics, and if anybody whosoever has this optional paper of PSIR and even sociology for that matter, maybe you can even bring in the famous thinkers, like you can even quote a few theories of Aristotle, where he talks about a particular topic, a concept of truth, where we study the under truth under a particular concept called as the correspondence theory. And then you can even talk about Immanuel Kant, right, where he talk where which he has given the coherence theory, right, the coherence theory of Immanuel Kant and Frederick Hegel, right. So all that becomes very important, and it kind of shows how diverse knowledge you have, especially in terms of understanding the topic and trying to represent it. So these kind of extra jewels that you have in terms of the knowledge has to be represented very soon in the introductions, to give the examiner a feel that you know something, right, you know few things, and not as a layman but as someone who is prepared for the civil services, right. So then going forward, you can try and explain all the other determinants, where you can talk about the nature of truth, where you can discuss in detail about the different nature of truth, the nature being the truth being absolute in the nature, or absolute in essence, where you can give the example of the law of gravity, right, where you're just trying to connect this with the law of gravity, where you're trying to explain as to how this law of gravity doesn't change based on who observes it, right, facts remain the same regardless of the observer. Then also you can talk about how truth is also dynamic in understanding, or dynamic in terms of perception, right, where interpretations of truth may evolve as knowledge grows from person to person. And also you can rightly connect this particular topic with how few people even till date believe that earth is flat, right, although we know that earth is round in shape, but there are still people who argue that earth is flat, or earth was flat. But when evidence showed otherwise, truth emerged clearer, right. So basically what you're trying to tell us, truth remains independent of human opinion in this particular subtopic, where it is also impartial and devoid of personal and societal biases, right, making it the purest common ground for humanity. So here, by talking about the humanity and establishing the idea that truth is the absolute required quality, because that is, or let's say the truth which is impartial or devoid of personal or societal bias, makes it a very common ground or a strong foundation, right, for the humanity, gives you a proper foundation to further explain your other dimensions of the essay, where you can talk about the historical perspective from the philosophical angle, where here you can even mention Plato, right, the concept of ideal forms. And all the way you can try and connect it to the Indian Vedantic philosophy also, where we talk about Satya, right. So all of these things matters a lot in terms of how your knowledge is with respect to the topic. And here, writing about the philosophy doesn't mean that you write the complete concept of Plato, the chronology and all of it. No, nothing, absolutely not required, but just with respect to this particular topic as to what truth pertains to Plato's concept of ideal forms, where he talks about truth in different forms, to ultimately bringing it to the Indian Vedic philosophy, which where we term it as Satya in various cultures. And also, talking about religion, you can even talk about how the concept of truth or Satya is same in almost all the religions, where you can talk about the Satyameva Jayate, the slogan that we have under the Hinduism, where truth alone triumphs. And under the Islam, where even see, basically the idea is to try and bring that from all religion, irrespective of which religion or which philosophy you're talking about. It is ultimately to point one thing, that truth, right? Truth is universal, right? So that is the whole point of this essay. Truth knows no color, which also means truth is impartial, and also it is truth is universal, and also it has to be impartial, right? And going forward, you can talk about how it affects the modern day relevance. You have to talk about how it is affecting at the governance level, the media and personal governance. You can talk about the availability of the RTI with the people, to make sure that transparency is maintained, right? And you can even talk about the media and technology, about the present in a scenario where the entire media is running behind spreading fake news, right? And how truth as a concept is important to ensure that the media, which is the fourth pillar of democracy, functions properly. And you can also talk about in connection to media and technology, you can also bring in the need of digital literacy, in order to ensure that truth as a concept can triumph, making sure that people are literate enough, both digitally and even generally, so that all these fake news can be curbed. And also at the personal level, you can ensure to have authentic relationships, provided you are truthful to your partner, right? These are the various dimensions that you can bring about. And then at the end, you can talk about the challenges to truth, where you talk about the prejudices, the propaganda, the information overload. Prejudices simply mean that how human minds often filter facts through different lens of personal beliefs, because every person has their own personal beliefs, and how these facts get filtered out based on the perception with which a particular human sees certain things. And then talking about few propaganda which are deliberately made or colored black or white, right? To control a huge mass. For example, what happened in Nazi, you can even bring in this dimension also, the Nazi Germany. And even the present authoritarian governments today also does this, right? So these are all challenges to truth, where they try to control the huge masses by spreading fake propagandas, right? The information overload, where you can talk about the present digital age, where with the very sheer volume of conflicting data, which makes it very difficult to uh, you know uh, rectify what is true and what is false, right? So all those things. And then you can add some case studies, where you can talk about the civil rights movement, especially in the US, where you can quote Martin Luther King Jr. And his emphasis on truth, as the truth was independent race. This was actually given by the Martin Luther King Jr. So all these extra information, and mentioning these important personalities will definitely make your essay stand out, in comparison with other essays. And in the way forward, you can also mention how this would help in various fields like education, where we have to ensure that we teach critical thinking and ethical reasoning for the students, to help individuals recognize the truth as an important quality, right? And also we can talk about the institutional integrity, right, where independent judiciary and media, right, where they must stay vigilant, right, pertaining to how important it is for the present situation in upholding uncolored truths. And also it becomes personal responsibility of every individual to strike or to strive to seek truth even when it is inconvenient. So these are the different ways you can write it, and at the end you can just conclude with something like a very like a very abstract or a very factual data. And also you can bring in some quotes by some famous personalities. Like for example, you can quote Rabindranath Tagore, where he has clearly said that facts are many but the truth is one, which ultimately is pretty much the same as the topic that has been asked, right? So this is with respect to the first essay. Now moving on to the second essay, the war related. That's the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. So this is also very very much relevant essay from the present current affairs, mostly pertaining to all the wars that we are right now seeing, be it India, Pakistan, Russia, Ukraine, and even your Israel and Hamas, right? So all of this made it very obvious that essay is being put here. So now the essay is not directly about the war, the implications and all of it, but in a very different way. It says the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, right? So it talks about the soft power. It talks about other aspects of the war which does not involve violence, right? The wisdom over destruction. So here you can famously start the entire essay by quoting Sun Tzu, a famous writer from China, a Chinese writer, 2500 years ago, who wrote a book. The book name itself is Art of War, right? So where he clearly mentions how avoiding conflict and just having strategic superiority can help you win war, and you need not actually get into violence, right? So this entire essay revolves around this particular topic. So talking about this, you can talk or bring in so many dimensions from the history, starting from the Chanakya and the Mauryan diplomacy, where they did not wage much wars, but their most important strategy was to build alliance to weaken their enemies. And you can even talk about the Cold War strategies, where not even a single nuclear war happened, but a lot of things still happened in terms of proxy wars and all of it. And one of the example, or you can draw in from the modern history, is this Cold War strategy, the Cold War period. You can even talk about Gandhiji's non-violence. Of course, as we as Indians praise the very tool of the Indian independence, right? Being the Gandhiji's non-violence. Even this can also be quoted. And going forward, you can also talk about the applications of this particular art, the strategy in the modern geopolitics, where it is important to indulge in diplomatic ties, or negotiations, or diplomatic means in order to come to an understanding, or to make sure that war does not escalate, right? And also how alliances formation can help, right, strategically. So basically it's all about strategy and soft power. So this particular essay is very dynamic, and it as more potential, where you can bring dimensions from all the aspect, like economic warfare, where you can talk about the use of tariffs, and resource weaponization, just like how China is using its rare earth elements as a means, as a weapon to control the entire geopolitical level, right? The cyber and information strategies, where the data storage and data information, all of those things can be absolutely used here, which can be made very very good feeders for your essay. And then talking about the other dimensions, you can talk about the corporate and personal relevance. You can talk about how these kind of strategies, right, having right strategy or right skill to address your adversaries can help you in business strategies, personal handling personal conflicts with your partners, right? And you can also talk about the psychological mastery, where you can talk how a calm mind will help you to make sure that you break the morale of your opponent, the enemy, right? And then you can even bring in so many case studies. Also you can talk about the Cuban missile crisis, right? So that is also one great example that you can talk about where the US and USSR stepped back from nuclear war through just careful negotiation, showing, showcasing the entire world that the power of diplomacy is more superior over destruction. So this is also one good example. Likewise, the fall of Berlin Wall, right? So these are the other aspects. Of course, we'll not be discussing everything in detail, but these are the dimensions. Now, if you look at the dimensions of this particular essay, the supreme art of war is to subdue enemy without fighting. We're talking about the introduction, where we are talking about the person who wrote this book, right? This pretty much covers the entire essay, that you have understood what this topic is all about. Then we have written another subtopic where we have given some idea, or more feeder with respect to this particular topic, as to how avoiding conflict and just capitalizing the strategy, or having strategic superiority helps you tackle few instances, wars, in fact, in this particular aspect. Then we have given the historical perspectives, right? We have tried and addressed a few areas from the personal level. We have tried and brought in a few dimensions from the psychological aspect. We have even given the case studies, right? Benefit, and we'll also have to talk about the benefits of this non-violent victory, right? As to how efficiently resources can be maintained, how this will be more stable, right? And the challenges, lessons for today at the end, where lessons for the present geopolitical things that are happening on. And we can also bring in the philosophical reflection also, talking about courage of restraint, and few lessons from Bhagavad Gita, where it talks about how wisdom of self mastery before external conquest, right? The Bhagavad Gita emphasizes that the wisdom of self mastery over having the control, and the building the courage over cowardness, right? And at the end of the essay, you can conclude it with something which is absolutely relevant today. Like, for example, you can talk about the wisdom of subduing the enemy without fighting remains not just as a relevant but an essential tool for humanity's survival and progress, and connected to Israel, Hamas, and any ongoing issue, which would have absolutely completed your entire essay. Then the third one, thought finds a world and creates one. Also, this is probably the toughest one in this section A. So of course, even this, people would have skipped writing this, but also it is not something that you could not have attempted, right? Because the idea is very simple, that it talks about the human history, as to how the human history is shaped by thought, and thought alone as a concept, as a thing, how important that is, making sure that human history is nothing but a chronicle of thoughts turned into reality. And how every great invention, every reform, and every revolution that has happened so far just began as a very small, minuscule, tiny spark, just like a small spark of fire that eventually uh, became, or that particular tiny spark of thought, or some perception of the world, which further influenced the actions and eventually created the world we live in. So you can just start with this particular idea, and then talk about few thinkers also. You can bring in some personalities. As far as I can think of, you can talk about the famous Ralph Waldo Emerson, as he observed that the ancestor of every action is a thought, right? Thought. Ancestor of every action is a thought, right? So this particular quote, if you could have remembered, right, this essay, which explores the power of thought, would have been complete. So going forward with the dimensions, you can talk about the nature of thought, where you can explain the thought as a seed of every creation, by giving various dimensions, like thought as a neutral force, dynamic, thought, how it is helpful in humans to adapt to time and context, right? So all of those things can be explained, and then bringing some historical evidence of thought, creating worlds, where you can talk about scientific revolutions, where Newton thought about why the apple fell in the first place, and led to the universal discovery of law of gravity, right? So because of that one thought, right, So you can just connect all of this like this, and then you can even bring in Einstein's theory of relativity, which reshaped the entire physics and our understanding about the universe. And going forward, we can talk about the social and political movements like the French Revolution, which completely reshaped Europe, right? Even the Satyagraha, Gandhi's idea of Satyagraha, and the non-violence, the freedom of path for India, which inspired just one thought of Mahatma Gandhi ji, the Satyagraha, right? The non-violence inspired, not only the people of India back then, but across the world. Even now, if you have to think about one particular person statue which are present in almost all the countries around the world, it is Mahatma Gandhi ji's. And why? Because of this one particular exceptional, concept of Satyagraha, right? So you can just connect all of these things, and even you can even talk about the technological prowess, about the Wright brothers, the invention of aeroplanes, right? Because of a particular thought. So this is also one of the easy topic, provided you have decoded what the topic is right at the beginning, right? And then you can also talk about the dark side of thought, like war and violence. Like, you can talk about Hitler, how that one particular idea to discriminate or to think negative about the Jews, right? So that is also one of the dimension that you can bring, that thought in both positive and also in the negative aspect. So it's a very simple essay, but most of you would have probably not attempted this, considering just by reading the statement, right? And you can also talk about the modern day applications where innovation and entrepreneurship, which are currently taking place at the national level. Like you can talk about the startups like SpaceX, even Infosys, when it actually began with a very bold idea initially, right? Which completely changed the entire industry, right? You can talk about the social change campaigns like Me Too campaigns, Swachh Bharat, which started with some simple thought and spread to create a tangible action. You can talk about the global cooperation, the idea of global citizenship, right? Which is driving international collaborations in the fields like health and climate, right? And then also at the end, you can even talk about the philosophical dimensions and the spiritual dimensions also, by talking about Buddhism, that all that we are is the result of what we have thought, right? The power of thought. Even the Bhagavad Gita, there are few things that in Bhagavad Gita it clearly talks about thoughts which determine one's destiny through actions and habits. Even modern psychology talks about how changing thoughts can change life outcomes, especially when studying the cognitive behavioral therapy. So that is what a few people say, that you don't have to bring in some of the aspects from your optional paper, especially when you write GS or essay. But there is no such limitation. Even any optional paper, any optional concept, if you can think that you can relate, you can absolutely bring. And in the end, you can just give a way forward, talk about cultivating constructive thinking, how it is useful in order to ensure, or it will be a way forward, making sure that it will help people harness AI, biotech, and other tools for collective good, collective vision for peace, and all of that. So that is also a very easy essay. Then coming to another essay, the best lessons are learned through bitter experiences. So this is also one of the easiest essay, which you can, in the introduction, talks about you can talk about life as a greatest teacher. And overall, if we have to discuss this, talks about few core areas, where one is that life as the greatest teacher, and also the most profound lessons often come wrapped in hardship. So this is what the core idea is. So you can also talk about the sweet experiences which bring joy, but also bitter ones bring wisdom. So you can bring in that contrast also, where sweet experiences usually bring joy, but also the bitter ones is what that brings wisdom. You can talk about the failures, the losses, the disappointments, though painful, which helps in character building and building resilience and prepare us for greater challenges, right? So even you can directly connect it with your mains, the civil services preparation, how constant failure still at the end of the day leaves you with that happiness if one day you clear the examination. So basically the entire essay revolves around one particular saying, if you have heard, it's the, yeah, failure is the stepping stone to success. If people have heard this particular proverb, the entire essay revolves around this. So talking about the various dimensions, you can talk about why bitter experiences teach best. You can talk about the emotional impact of it, the reality check that it gives, and the humility, and the growth, the kind of qualities that it will instill in you going forward. You can talk about the personal lessons from bitterness. You can also add a few famous examples like Steve Jobs, Nick Vujicic. See all of these kind of examples which further explaining the value of success, where they've founded the Steve, the story of Steve Jobs and Apple, right? So pretty much giving an idea as to how an essay should be written. So just because it talks about failure as the stepping stone for success, it doesn't mean you just have to brush around the philosophical concept itself, right? So you have enough opportunity where you can bring in details from various aspects. So talking about the examples, you can talk about Steve Jobs, right? And then the historical and social lessons also. You can talk about India's partition, the unity and secularism, right? So you can talk about world wars, you can talk about economic crisis, right? Because at the end, even no matter what happened, in terms of India's freedom struggle, the India's partition, right? The violence and suffering taught the nation the importance of the unity and secularism, right? In terms of world wars, the devastation of the two world wars, which led to the creation of the United Nations, and also it created a framework to prevent the future, global conflicts through peace framework. So these are some of the examples how you can connect things. Then you can also talk about the lessons in leadership, where you can quote Abraham Lincoln and Mahatma Gandhi ji, by saying that Abraham Lincoln faced multiple electoral defeats before becoming one of the greatest US presidents, saying that failure still is okay and failure is the stepping stone to success. So revolving around the same idea of the failure as the stepping stone to success, right? And then you can talk about the societal and collective growth as one of the dimension going forward, the philosophical and spiritual perspective, where you can famously bring the stoicism, where it talks about pain and hardships are the opportunities to build a character, that strength is gained through suffering. You can talk about the Indian philosophy, where it talks about suffering as a path for self realization and inner strength. You can even bring in modern psychology, right? So there is no limit in terms of what you write here. So at the end, you have to make sure that you give a very proper conclusion, stating that bitter experiences, though painful, are the greatest teacher, and they help to strip away all the illusions, and also it ensures to build resilience and prepare individuals and societies for greater heights, right? So these kind of things. And also you can famously quote Rumi. You might have studied in modern history, sorry, the medieval history, where he quotes, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Right? To fear pain is to fear growth. To embrace it with wisdom is to turn every bitter experience into a stepping stone towards strength, wisdom, and lasting success. Right? So this would pretty much complete your entire essay. So in this today's video, we have discussed the section A of the essay. I think this is sufficient for this particular video. In the section, the next video, we will be discussing about the section B part of the essay, and probably this is what is for today's video. So I hope you have found this video informative. For more such informative video like this, please do subscribe Believers IAS YouTube channel. Thank you and have a good day.